Friday morning, NBL now coming your way to round out the week, of course, thanks to Code Sports, your number one home for everything NBL this season. Joel Peterson with you as we head into a weekend of hoops that promises plenty based on what we've seen so far. And Mark Worthington is here with me. Wortho, good to see you, mate.
Good to see you too, JP. Let's get into it. Big weekend ahead of us.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've already had a couple of games that have provided plenty of storylines so far. Let's start with last night, Tassie and Adelaide. 5 on the bounce now that Tassie have lost all in Tasmania, which is absolutely unheard of for this team. They go down to the 36ers last night. They got out pretty wide. Tassie drew that margin back, but Adelaide controlled that game for the most part. What did you make of it from a big picture perspective?
Yeah, the scoreline flooded Tasmania in the end because by three-quarter time, this game was all over. Up by 25 points, I think, at three-quarter time. And really the coming out party again for Jaylen Cheatham in the game where Bryce was struggling a little bit. He looked tired. He looked fatigued. 2 of 10 shooting. A lot of his shots falling short, which is always a good sign that someone is a bit tired. But Jaylen Cheatham stepping up, knocking down 3 threes, playing in a way, and with all due respect, he played with smarts like Jesse Wagstaff last night. The way that he faked the handoffs, coming off balls, getting to the basket. He was just all over the court last night and proved to be the game winner for Adelaide.
Mike Wells has called him their Swiss Army knife. In terms of the ceiling of this team, obviously Bryce, when he gets going and when DJ get going, we know what they can do, but Zylan's ability to impact the game in a number of ways gives Adelaide a really different look to what they've had, not only last season, but to what a lot of other NBL teams can do. What do you think his impact could be across the course of the rest of this season?
I think he's definitely the Robin to the Batman that is Bryce Cotton. His ability, his rebounding ability is off the charts. And even last night, seeing a few of those rebounds when he was head and shoulders above everyone else in the crowd to go get a rebound was impressive. His ability to knock down a three-point shot when open is important for him. But more importantly, to be a bit more of a playmaker. And this is where a lot of pundits have said that Adelaide haven't had enough firepower. I've always been of the opinion that they've had the firepower there. They probably just haven't gelled in the right way to use them correctly. And I go back to previous Perth Wildcats teams that have had a Bryce Cotton that has been a very dominant Bryce Cotton in what he does, and he has a lot of gravitational pull. If Adelaide and Mike Wells specifically can find a way to get Bryce more back cuts with an open space, if you see their offense, it is very crowded still at the moment. If they can get Xylem and Ice in more short rolls with a dunker spot position and shooters there, that would be good for them. If some of the players understood their role that they shouldn't be shooting the ball and go into a dribble handoff and create a second screen almost for Bryce Cotton, I think there's a whole new level of offense that can be unlocked in Adelaide that currently isn't being tapped. They are winning, which is the good part. I would argue that they are winning ugly at the moment, but a win nonetheless. So there's still another level or two to this in Adelaide, in my opinion.
We'll come back to that firepower thing with Adelaide. On Tassie, so they've clearly they're undermanned at the moment. No David Johnson. They've just been sort of treading water until he gets back, and now Starks goes out of the lineup over the last couple of games, so they weren't really using all that much anyway. What have you made of where they are at the moment and this 5-game losing streak they find themselves on?
They're in struggle street at the moment, and it's a bit of a grind for Tassie. You saw last night that they were undersized, undermanned. Isaac Humphries probably should have got the ball more in the post. Rakocevic did a great job when he came in and demanded the ball. Zylan Cheatham had their way. They smashed him on the rebounds as well. For me, Tassie is just lacking. They're just not a top 6 team as it stands currently, which seems weird that you're even trying to write them off early in the season because we know what Scott Roth can do. And more importantly, Scott Roth doesn't care what we think about it he'd have a game plan going forward. But Josh Bannon has been a bright spark for him. I love the play of Bryce Hamilton. It's not like they're lacking ability in their team, but when you don't have a Sean McDonald, when you don't have a Will Magnay, when you don't have a David Johnson, there is parts there that are integral to this team being successful. And when they're all there together, and unfortunately we haven't seen Sean McDonald, but when they're all there as a collective, they are a very good basketball team. They're just missing pieces at the moment.
They're going to have to play catch-up over the back end of the season, that's for sure. So reporting from ESPN's Olgun Ulick today that Adelaide has signed a new import. So, of course, they've had this spot open for a while, and they've signed Troy Brown Jr., who was the 15th pick in the NBA draft of 2018 out of Oregon. He was drafted by the Washington Wizards. He then spent some time with a couple of NBA franchises. He's most recently been playing over in Puerto Rico. What do you make of this reported signing, Wortho, and what would he bring to the Sixers if this does pan out for them?
Yeah, he looks like an upgrade on Matt Kenyon, who they already have. He's a point-of-attack defender. In the NBA, he would get the assignment against a Devin Booker or Ja Morant type of player. So to have someone that comes in with a defensive mindset I think is a great addition for any team as far as an import goes. What he can also do is knock down a three. So that opens up the floor for, instead of a Matt Kenyon shooting the ball now, you've got a Troy Brown Jr. shooting the ball, which would be at a higher clip. Obviously, we need to see at what sort of shape he comes in if he does come in. But he looks like a solid signing by Adelaide, but it's just another piece in the cog of the machine that they need to figure out how this is going to all pan out, because they definitely have the pieces there already.
Of course, Matt Kenyon started last night. No DJ Vasiljevic in that starting lineup for the Sixers, so Mike Wells not afraid to change things up in getting a win down in Tassie. The Wednesday night game on the Gold Coast turned out to be another night of disaster, really, for the Brisbane Bullets, and clearly there's been a lot of conversation, and I know your thoughts are pretty strong, Wortho, on sort of the coaching setup and some of that, but I mean, I don't know whether they're practicing in a gym full of ladders or black cats or something this year in Brisbane, but they've just been, it's absolutely brutal what they've gone through from an injury perspective. Casey Prather, the latest there, so he'll miss the rest of the season with what the team has called a hardware fixation issue. Now, anytime a human sounds like a computer when it comes to an injury, that is not a good thing. You don't want any kind of hardware issue with your computer or with your person. Devastating for Casey. Obviously, Ariana is part of the NBL broadcast family, and that must have been so tough. And I think you and I can probably both sympathise with watching your partner go out there at the elite level and maybe having an injury, and just sort of how gut-wrenching that can be. He was in MVP form. He was playing some of the best basketball of his career. When you sort of think about the way that this has panned out for Casey, what's your gut reaction to it all?
Yeah, devastated for him. I think it's very rare that we get a very talented basketball player that leaves our shores, comes back under an injury cloud when he returns in the first place. The team takes the time and the patience to invest time into him, knowing what the best version of Casey would have looked like coming back. They get that best version of Casey and now have another setback. And as I watched the game and I saw it happening, you couldn't help but feel really, really bad for both him, Ariana, because you're right, you and I do have a unique perspective of being able to watch our partners play elite level sports, and it is a different feeling from feeling it yourself as an ex-pro athlete to watching your partner do it. It was gut-wrenching all around, and we can only hope, and it's sad to hear that he's going to miss the rest of the season, because he was the bright spark of Brisbane this year. But hopefully it's a speedy recovery and everything, and we do get this version of Casey back next year, because he's been outstanding for the NBL.
Yeah, it's a great shout. Hopefully the recovery goes smoothly for him. And and we can see him back doing what he was doing. I guess now it turns to where does Brisbane go next? And there's been some reporting around Jaylen Adams' future. And I mean, the jungle drums have been beating here for a little while as to whether he might continue with the Brisbane Bullets and just what his role is with this team. Now, there was obviously a bit of sort of conjecture, and Leonard and Derek Rucker were really strong on Wednesday night that he wasn't doing the right things out there on the court. The body language didn't look great. I was watching that game and was bewildered by some of what he was doing in terms of missing a shot and just standing there and sort of out for a Sunday stroll type of thing. If you were part of this Brisbane Bullets organisation at the moment, what kind of decision making would be going through your head around Jaylen Adams?
Hopping in a time machine, going back a couple of months and not signing him in the first place would have been a great start. But I used to be a NBA scout, and even through his MVP season, there was a lot of rumblings about his professionalism and the way that he goes about his business. That seems to have bled through into the Brisbane colours now, which is unfortunate because he's a hell of a talent. The one thing during that MVP season, he had Jarrell Martin as a quote-unquote bigger brother to be able to put his arms around him and tell him what to do and how to go about his business. So as much as we give credit for Chase Buford and all the success that Jaylen Adams had in Sydney, Jarrell Martin played a huge role in looking after Jaylen Adams that season. Obviously, Jarrell left Sydney, and we started to see the fractures of Jaylen Adams in Sydney. Post that, leads to his departure, goes to Brisbane, and all the same stories are ringing true in Brisbane. What did Brisbane do from here? Well, they've got a ready-made backup in Lamar Patterson to come in to fill in for Casey Prather's spot, who was playing some really good basketball until he got put back into the injury replacement role. But if I'm Brisbane, I'm investing time into Devers, Murray, the young guys there, Dukas, and not wasting another second with Jaylen Adams because, like you said, I've never seen an import do less on a basketball court, whether it is pass the ball and walk and stand or play defense, walk and stand. He mailed in this game on Wednesday, and if I was a teammate, I wouldn't be too impressed by that.
The reporting from Code Sports is that they haven't been. Of course, the expert analysis and insider access from Code Sports, so codesports.com.au and the app for all the latest on that story as it unfolds. Of course, they travel to Melbourne on Saturday to face Melbourne United. Whether Jaylen Adams is with them is one question, and then how they fare against Melbourne United is another question entirely. Sydney Illawarra is the blockbuster game for the weekend, Sunday 2 o'clock or 2:30. Of course, these two teams have got such a strong rivalry over many years, and Sean Bruce with a milestone game this weekend, but sort of the Davo Hickey and Kendrick Davis matchup, of course, Xavier Cooks, JaVale McGee, there's stars all over the floor in terms of this one, and both of these teams just look to be finding their feet in the season. How do you assess this matchup as we head towards Sunday? Yeah,
it's interesting. Illawarra obviously got off to a pretty terrible start for their championship defence, but have found form, and it's come off the back of Davo Hickey and what he's been able to bring to the table and feeling more comfortable. I was one person, and I put my hand up and said I wasn't sure if Davo was the right guy to lead this team. I thought he was being an excellent spark plug, as he's been for the last couple of seasons off the bench. But boy, have I been wrong about Davo. He has been the absolute creme of the crop when it comes to point guards since his return and what he brings to the table. And then for Sydney, they're finding that their inconsistencies are still troublesome for myself. And the best Sydney Kings basketball can beat anyone. The worst Sydney Kings basketball can lose to anyone. So it's a real Jekyll and Hyde at the moment with the Kings. I think they've found a bit more rhythm with Xavier Cooks being a little bit more aggressive on the offensive end. Delhi still is going through his offensive struggles. I still back Delhi to find his way out of this and figure this out. And then for Illawarra, making JaVale a focus without being just a walk down and throw the ball to JaVale. Keep finding ways to get him on the move and make it difficult because, let's face it, Tim Suarez, as talented of a basketball player that he is, athletically can't go with JaVale McGee. So what does Sydney have in place as a defensive game plan? I can imagine there's going to be a lot of doubling off the post, and how are their rotations off that from there? And then on the other end, how do they drag JaVale away from the basket, and how is Tim Suarez able to knock down a couple of threes to make that threat a little bit larger? And what role does Quatnoy play in this as well? Because when he comes on and plays next to Xavier Cooks, how do they get him more involved in the offensive end? Not that he needs an invitation to shoot, but how do they get him more involved?
He sort of comes with a bag of his own invitations to any party, I think, quite know when it comes to shooting. But, New Zealand is the sort of the test case for Sam Menenga dragging McGee away from the rim and being able to exploit that matchup. And I'm sure JaVale McGee would probably go, yeah, you want to put Quatnoy on me and let him shoot? Well, let's see what happens down the other end of the floor. So it's the chess match between these two teams is fascinating. We'll see what comes out of it after Sunday. But as you go into it, do you think there's room for both of these teams in a top four? We've got Melbourne, we've got Adelaide, we've got Perth, we've got Southeast, we've got these two teams who are right on the precipice. I mean, are they top four capable, both or either of these teams in the long run?
Both are capable. I don't think both will be there. I think Perth, Adelaide, and Melbourne are definite threes. Southeast Melbourne, I still have a question mark over because the teams that they have beat haven't really been in form when they've beaten them. So there's still the question mark for myself. And then we've seen what they're like versus Melbourne United so far. So that's still a case study for myself. Illawarra and Sydney both have the talent to be a top four team. They both got the rosters to be a top four team. But how they finish this season out, we'll find out. At the back end of Christmas, we're going to have a real clear idea in my mind where these teams all stand. The six that we've named, I think, are going to be the six that are in the top six. The only team that you can't write off is that Tasmania team because you're just unsure of what they're capable of doing, and if they get most of their men back, what sort of run can they put in the back end. But definitely both capable of top four, more likely both in that fifth and sixth spot as it stands.
You wanted to chat about the MVP conversation, of course. Bryce Cotton always leads this conversation. JaVale McGee's name's been thrown up there. Nathan Sobey's put himself in the chat. What are your thoughts on that, sort of all those dealings as we get to this point of the season?
Well, I think the call for JaVale being MVP has gotten louder in the last 2 weeks. And I think this is not just the NBL, but I think this is all sports. When we have someone as great as what Bryce Cotton has been, sometimes we can get a wandering eye with the shiny new toy that has come to the yard in JaVale McGee. My argument would be that while JaVale McGee, and let's go into this round, Bryce Cotton is leading the league in points, he is leading the league in steals, and he's third in assists. JaVale, third in points, leading the league in rebounds, and third in block shots as it stands. Both statistically are doing fantastic. Like, you couldn't ask for much more from both players. Bryce Cotton's team has won 8 games. JaVale McGee's team's won 4 games. And 2 of those wins have come off the back of Dave O'Hickey coming back into this lineup and helping this Illawarra team. So, as great as what JaVale has been, is he the most valuable player? I'd argue that Dave O'Hickey has been more valuable for Illawarra since his return to Illawarra. Bryce Cotton is still the greatest. Let's not mix words here. He's the best player in the competition, and his value to his team outweighs any other value to any other player in their team. So for me, Bryce Cotton's still the MVP. I know he had a quiet game last night and other people stepped up. but the gravity in the pool that Bryce Cotton has within his organisation is immense and much more than any other player in this league. MVP for sure.
Going to take a little bit to topple him off the throne. That is for sure. Southeast Melbourne go to Cairns tonight. You mentioned there some question marks around Southeast Melbourne, of course. Lost the throwdown last time out. They've got Adelaide next week. So a couple of those really key tests for them are still to come, and they head to far north Queensland, where they've had a reasonably good record against the Taipans in recent times, as have most teams, to be fair. For Cairns, who steps up tonight, thanks to our official underwear partner of the NBL, Step1.life? Who needs to step up for them tonight? And if they don't get that kind of performance, are you willing to really put a line through their campaign?
It's the imports. Plain and simple. It's not a singular player. It's the imports that need to step up. The first game of the season for Cairns was against Southeast Melbourne, and they had an extraordinary amount of turnovers in that game because they didn't have a point guard. Andrew Andrews comes into the team now, so they've got a steady head as a point guard. They can't turn the ball over. So that's first and foremost. Admiral Schofield, NBA credentials, has come in and been very hit and miss as a player so far. Your team has been suffering with injuries and setbacks. You have to step up as well. And Marcus Lee, please don't foul. Just play hard. Do, like, 90% of the time, Marcus Lee does the right play defensively. And it's the 10% at the end of the play that usually gets him in trouble. Just do the 90%. If we get a 90% of Marcus Lee and play that sort of defense, if he steps up and makes it hard at the rim for a Geordie Hunter or a John Brown, that goes a long way towards the Taipans being competitive tonight and being able to win the game. So step up. It's the Cairns Taipans imports for me.
I like it. No Hunter Maldonado tonight for Southeast Melbourne, but Angus Glover is back, which is very good news for them. Before we get out of here, the Boomers squad's been named to play the Tall Blacks. So Dean Vickerman will be coaching that team. Kerry Williams, Luke Brennan, and John Riley is back in that coaching setup too. So Josh Bannon, Dash Daniels, Alex Dukas, Owen Foxwell, Angus Glover, Jalen Galloway, Geordie Hunter, Nick Kay, who just rolls up for these Boomers events in every FIBA window, which we absolutely love. No matter where he is in the world, he's always putting his hand up for the green and gold. Will Magnay, Elijah Pepper, Davo Hickey, and Jack White is the squad that's been assembled to play during this FIBA window, which is only a couple of weeks away. What are your thoughts on the mix for the Aussies?
Just as a former Boomer, it's an incredible privilege to be able to put on the green and gold, and for all those players, the opportunity, whether it's their first time or in Nick Case the 1,000th time that he's ever played for the Boomers, it's a privilege for them to be able to do it. It's a great opportunity. It's always a great rivalry versus the Tall Blacks as well. And all you ask for as an ex-Boomer is that tradition of brotherhood continues. And I'm sure that Dean Vickerman, who is the best coach in the NBL currently, will get the guys fired up for the game and the series against the Kiwis. So looking forward to it. Can't wait. And happy for the first timers to be able to put that jersey on, especially young Dash, because it won't be his last time.
Yeah, it's all very cool stuff for that team. We're looking forward to seeing how they go for, of course, that Asian qualifying window for the 2027 World Cup. Wortho, good to talk hoops with you as always, mate. Love your insights and have a great weekend.
Thanks, JP.
Mark Worthington with us on NBL Now. Enjoy your weekend of NBL hoops. So much more coming across the course of this weekend. It should be an absolute ripper.